good morning, everyone. Live from Realcomm. I'm Howard Berger, and I'm here with David Gazek from Gazek Consulting. David's in from San Francisco, as you can probably tell from our background. And before we get started, Dave, take a couple of minutes and tell some of the folks a little bit about yourself, your company, what you're doing, your background.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm an organizational advisor and strategist, and that means I work with leaders, CEOs, senior leadership team, on their organizational issues. We touch on strategic planning, organizational structure, change management, communication issues, accountability, and it's the whole range of the people side that makes the company work. Mm-hmm. And I help them diagnose what's going on, then I help them design a process that's tailored to fix what's going on, and then deliver the solutions. And I've been in the real estate business my whole life. For the last 30 years, I was a developer, I was a public agency director, and I was a real estate consultant to development companies. And so I have kind of boots on the ground experience and perspective that I bring to those same companies to help them with their organizations.
Well, we spoke a couple of times in preparation for the conference, and I think we both agreed. I mean, our industry is in a very unique and challenging point in time. A lot of forces converging. You've got climate, you've got demographics, you've got economics, we've got geopolitical that are challenging and morphing a lot of traditional behaviors, especially attitudes about work itself that I think is going to profoundly affect our real estate industry. So in your presentation yesterday, it was leading our organizations in these uncharted times,
right?
In these uncharted times, you tied together the convergence of external factors that are shifting these human behaviors and attitudes about work, and how they're impacting commercial real estate organizations. So for those who didn't get to hear you speak, could you summarize first, where you see leaders falling short, and then second, how to manage those external factors and the impacts on their organizations, and then thirdly, what can they do about it?
Great, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Well, leadership is all about managing change. Thank you. Leadership is all about managing change and its conflict, its impacts on the organization. And we have all been dealing with digital disruption, the Great Resignation, the pandemic, and shifting priorities in the workforce. And they have all been connected to and continue to be connected to dramatic declines in employee engagement and retention, which have reached epic proportions and which have caused enormous stress for everyone, C-suite down. But we can turn that around. And the way to do it is to have a company culture of mutual trust and respect, where everyone feels heard and valued. Mm-hmm. That's where we're falling short as leaders. Nobody wants to follow a leader that they don't trust and respect. Mm-hmm. But as we all know, trust and respect has to be earned. And the only way we can do that is to let down our armor and be vulnerable, which means relating to people as people, not just producers.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. And that means accepting the uncertainty, risk, and exposure that comes with having these hard conversations about organizational issues and admitting that we don't have all the answers, we make mistakes, and we don't know what the outcome will be. But the problem is, where do we get the courage to do all that?
So instead, what you're saying is, instead of shoving these or setting aside these difficult conversations, confront them.
Yes.
Confront them. Get them out of the way.
And one of the ways to help you do that is to have an employee-centric mindset.
Agreed.
Where you are more self-aware, where you're more accountable, and you're more curious, mostly, about what it is that motivates your teams and what it is they need to be successful. When we do that, and one way that I put that in the presentation is, ask not only what your employees can do for you, ask what you can do for your employees. And
big shift for a lot of organizations.
It's a big shift, but when we do that, we can begin to reverse the decline in employee engagement and retention. And that's what this slide was summarizing. I don't know if our audience can see it.
I don't know if everybody. Yeah, I think they can. I'll lean back a little bit so you can see that portion. But no, I agree. There's a people centricity
Yes.
that is becoming more and more apparent that organizations really need, because that's going to affect not only how they make decisions and they do their visioning and planning, but it seriously impacts the way their real estate assets are used.
Yes.
You know, how do they design them? What amenities, would an organization need to offer their employees?
Right.
And the only way to really know that is you can't. Yes, you can survey folks enough, but you really need to get to know almost on an individual basis.
Right.
The specific challenges and the needs of of the people in your organization.
We think about that when we reach out to our tenants and we try to not only attract them to our buildings and compete with the other companies doing the same, but when we want to retain them and we want to make them lifelong tenants and reduce turnover of the tenants. Well, that same attention and curiosity and hard listening that we do with the tenants, we need to now do more with our employees.
Probably even to a greater degree. Especially now, with as difficult as it is to, attract new tenants from a declining employee pool, but attract good talent, which really is the lifeblood of a functional business.
It is, I think one of the things that I think we were going to talk about is why is this so important to do now, perhaps more than ever. And I would say to you, because the stakes are higher than ever. Productivity and profitability are definitely on the line, because to stay competitive, we need to maintain high levels of employee engagement and retention. And we all know that it is harder and harder to hold on to employees, especially the highest producers. They're out.
Everybody is out there right now. They're fighting for the same employee pool, and they're fighting for your employees.
Right. And the best producers are less and less interested in their work and in their companies because they want more from their jobs. They want to learn, they want to grow and be challenged, and they want to feel more connected to the people and to the values of their companies. It's not just about the paycheck anymore.
I mean, the pandemic shifted so many attitudes about work, and I mean, if in my opinion, if the pandemic were only 90 days, 6 months, those attitudes would probably be a little bit more plastic and there'd be more plasticity, and we'd be able to revert back to old operating models. But it's been almost 2 years now, and I think people's behaviors have changed,
yes,
crystallized, and really morphed.
Yeah, and we have seen that over half the workforce is actively looking for new opportunities. If you were to look at your company and you were to ask yourself, are they happy here? Most likely, half of them at least are looking for new opportunities. And, many of them...
You just hope that that's the half
that's not in your company.
Really,
right.
Yeah.
And many of them are resigning, as we know, or willing to resign without having a new job, because this sense of disillusionment and frustration in the workforce, it's been growing for years, and the technology revolution and the Great Resignation and the shifting priorities in the workforce combined and converged, to use your earlier word, with the pandemic to only magnify and accelerate what's already been going on.
Yeah.
And the real estate industry, as we know, has a culture which is it tends to be suited up in armor. So it's hard for us to make the shift. But companies whose leaders are willing to have the courage to be vulnerable and face those fears and barriers that block them from having those hard conversations will be the winners. And they will attract and retain the best workers, and they will remain to have the competitive edge.
They just have to be receptive to having those conversations, because typically in our industry, with our demographic, middle-aged white male, leadership, that probably going to be incumbent still for another, for a while. not always open to the vulnerability conversation.
And it's a human issue too.
Yeah.
And so I know we are the older crowd, but it's a human condition where it's hard to be vulnerable and have conversations about culture, people, process. And I think any generation faces that as well.
So, I mean, assuming a company says, okay, listen, we want to, we realize it's important. A lot of folks right now with all these competing issues, they have a lot on their plate. Everybody's got a lot to do. How do they find the time and the resources, especially now that they're running leaner than they ever have before, to find, replace the talent, build their, build the workforce that they need to be competitive?
Right. You know, I've been doing this a while, and time is always the dilemma. But to be honest with you, I think it's more about denial. And when I say that, I mean, when we're not feeling well, how long do we put off going to the doctor?
Right.
You know, we all have our own threshold of pain and suffering that we can bear and negotiating that we do with ourselves before we make the call, right? Well, leaders of organizations are no different.
When it hurts enough, they'll call the doctor.
Right.
Yeah.
So when a leader has reaches their threshold of bottlenecks and conflicts and dysfunction within the organization, they make the call. And guess what? They make the time to face the issues because they can no longer look the other way. The problem is, the longer they wait, the more complicated the problems are getting, and the greater the impacts are on the people and the organization. And, it just can take longer to right the ship.
I would say if they're not in that process now, they probably waited too long. So could you give us a couple of examples, some results you've achieved with leaders and organizations and teams, and just a little bit about the processes that you had to go through to get those results?
Yeah, maybe I should start with the process. So when the CEO or senior leader gives me a call, reaches out, that's when it starts. That's the crack in the door. Mm-hmm. And it means that they know there's a problem, that they know they need outside expertise to help fix it, and they're willing to engage. And at that point, it's my job to guide them through this process of discovery and problem solving, where we build on that courage and vulnerability that it took them to make the call in order to get the results they need. Mm-hmm. And we start with, what are they worrying about the most? What keeps them up at night? And we create this methodical process where I sit in on meetings and I speak with the key players, I gather information, I look for patterns and roadblocks and uncover unseen tensions in order to diagnose and assess what's really going on. And that process is very personal and vulnerable for everyone.
Different
for everyone.
everyone.
So let me explain. The teams have a chance now to be open and frank about the company, about the people they work with, and about the challenges they face. For me, I'm speaking truth to power. Mm-hmm. And that's a privilege and a responsibility because I have to be very clear, transparent, and empathetic, because I'm often finding a problem that they didn't think they had or know they had, different from the one they said, David, we need your help on.
Right.
And I'm giving them insights and information which they may not be expecting and which can sometimes be hard to hear.
It'd be difficult.
And for the CEO and the senior leadership team, they're getting unfiltered, honest information about how they are perceived by the people they work with and what they can do, how their actions and behaviors can be part of the problem. And so that perspective helps them see where they could do better. And that's the key, because then we can have meetings facilitated with the leaders and the teams where the willingness of the leaders now to be more open and vulnerable about the challenges they're all having allows the teams to do the same, and that changes everything.
And that kick-starts that
everything.
The
conversations are more authentic, they're more constructive, and they're building mutual trust and respect, and that is the key to greater engagement of the employees and greater productivity.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, unfortunately, I mean, we could talk about this for another hour.
I didn't realize.
We're out of time. We're out of time.
I had so much fun.
This was great. Great conversation.
Thank you for
inviting. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And this is important work, and I would really, especially in our industry, love to see more leaders engage,
Right.
in this process.
Well, thank you for inviting me to the conference and for allowing me to introduce all of this work, which is so important for all companies.
Well, thank you for being with us.